Welcome to those who are joining. Just let me know if you can hear me okay. You can drop a message in the chat if the audio is good, if the video looks good, or if you're seeing any issues. Okay, Ruben says looks good or sounds good or both. Great to see folks who are coming in the room here. And I'm jumping on here to do a spontaneous Q&A, recognizing that I haven't been going live very often, and also because we have the workshops on extended hiatus, I want to create some opportunities where we can interact, and obviously I can answer your questions. So Ruben says, you're like Elvis. Okay, I'll take that as a compliment. And it's good to see people here. So the way it works, it's very simple. Any question you have at all that you would want me to answer, you can drop in the chat. Now, obviously, we want to stay focused on the topics that we talk about on this channel. So let me start off by briefly summarizing what that might include. And it probably includes more than you think, because we're not just limited to financial remedy or how to deal with the commercial banking system, although that is a part of it. The foundational work that we actually study at the Freedom Studio, formerly conditionalacceptance.com, because now we're migrating to the new name, is really built on a foundation of understanding natural law. Natural law and the hidden, mostly hidden or occulted sciences of how reality works, and I would say equally as importantly, how you work, what makes you tick. So that inner and outer domain. So because of that focus, you can really almost ask any question you want. Now, most people are struggling just to get by. Most people are struggling with their, under the weight of the commercial, very oppressive commercial banking system. So a big part of what we do here is to help you, first of all, understand the nature of that system, and then how to start to extricate yourself or take a superior position. Okay, once you start to see it more as a game, and you've been kind of trampled on because you didn't really know how the game is played. Okay, so that's a lot of what we do, is we're helping you to level up here. So having said that, see what people are saying. Darius says, thanks for your information. It is needed. Well, I'm glad you're getting value from that, Darius. I do what I do both out of, I would say, also out of a love for the knowledge itself and for truth, and feeling like I want to serve. My role is to serve the truth, but also just seeing you and others take that information and apply it in your own lives and make something out of it gives me a lot of pleasure. And I get a lot of great feedback, especially during our private study sessions. I've had people say some very kind words about the value of the information, the knowledge, but also even just the ability to ask questions, to have a forum to do that. So these lives are kind of my attempt to try something different. I think the workshops that we were doing between May and roughly October, November really served a great purpose. And now it's time to go on to something else. Okay, in other words, all good things come to an end, or another, it's time to turn another chapter. So we probably won't be going back to do exactly the same thing. That's not to say there isn't scope to do some live workshops. And in fact, we do private study sessions every week with our members, which is kind of like that. But there will probably be some new trainings that I'm going to roll out in terms of the workshop format, because I get asked that a lot. So I'm not seeing a lot of questions here. So this is your opportunity to ask any question at all. So let's go to, oh, and by the way, I just want to say, some people are surprised by that. I'm going to be hard on you sometimes based on the questions you ask. And some people are not going to like that. Some people are going to run away. And that's just the way it is. Okay. So let's go to your questions. Marcelo asks, what should the next steps be? Well, Marcelo, first of all, I would invite you to formulate your question in a little better, because I could say, next steps for what? Okay. Now I could guess that you're talking about next steps to, alleviate yourself from financial slavery, things like that, because that's obviously what we talk about. But try to be more specific. In the context of what we're doing, obviously following this channel, wherever you're watching this, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube, subscribe to the channel, maybe go back and watch some of the previous content. If you're brand new, that's going to be a great first step. Obviously, please like the video so we can push it out more. Subscribing also helps me reach more people, or following me on social media. Then the next step after that would be to jump into our community. So you're going to want to go to the website. The website's still conditionalacceptance.com, because I have purchased the new domain, thefreedomstudio.org, but we haven't yet executed the project to migrate the website to the new domain. So for the meantime, we're still using the old domain, which is conditionalacceptance.com. Let me actually drop a link here. I'll just drop a link right to our community page so you can join us there and start the conversation. Wait a second. Just share that link here. Okay. That's the community page on the website. And then the next step beyond that, depending on what you want to do, is to become, if you're not already, you can become a member. The membership is basically, that's another page on the website. I'll just drop that so you can explore that. That is a paid membership, but it starts at only $7.77 a month. So it's very accessible to most people. Okay. And the beauty of it is that you get to meet with me live 4 times a month or once a week. We do what are called private study sessions, and you're actually going to get access to the entire history of all the previous study sessions, plus all the special trainings. I mean, it's pretty comprehensive what you get, as well as some special materials and so forth. Everybody's situation is unique. So on those study sessions, we're not necessarily going to be able to solve every single little problem that you're going to face in your own life, but we're going to give you some strong and powerful tools to level up so that you have a better chance of doing that. Ruben asks, is it true that if you put a trap, you must put the solution, escape or remedy, but you don't have to tell them about it? No. If you're a predator, you're not going to put an escape in your trap. That doesn't make much sense, right? If you're a predator, then you're not going to want your prey to escape. This is just basic common sense. Now, there may be reasons why there is a remedy in the financial system that may not be even necessarily because it was put there intentionally. I used to have a different way of thinking about this, but why would a predator The only reason that I think a predator would want their prey to escape if they wanted to toy with them, which would just be an extra layer of cruelty, if you think about it. So my newer theory is that there's a couple of reasons why there might be a remedy in the financial system that once you discover it is pretty straightforward. It could be nature itself made sure that happened. And I couldn't really explain that except to say that everything that exists, we're all essentially exist in the mind of the creator. So everything is, we're all the imagination of the creator. So all things are possible. So maybe it's just, through the inherent intelligence and reality, it just made sure that there was a way out, so that it wasn't something that would just self-destruct. That's one possibility. The other is that the engineers of the financial system, for whatever reason, based on whatever either religious belief or ideology or whatever their thought process is, they wanted to put that there to give people an option. And again, it could be because they're testing us. John Lamb Lash calls it a shit test, which actually comes from dating. If dating, remember guys and gals used to date each other, remember back in the day. And this phenomenon, guys would notice that there was this phenomenon that they called a shit test. And the idea of the shit test is that the girl is, or the woman is asking the guy something, not necessarily even to get a direct answer, but maybe even just to make sure that this guy is coherent with himself, that he's congruent, that he's not full of shit, that he can be trusted. Because if she, the whole idea, if she's going to spend time with him, this woman wants to know that this guy can be trusted. So what more effective way to quickly weed out, bad characters or people that are just going to get you in trouble than to do a shit test? So in a way, the remedy could be a shit test for humanity. That's kind of what John Lamb Lash was implying in one of his conversations, and I think that I think there could be a lot of truth to that. I haven't really contemplated that idea very deeply, but it resonates at least initially. So great question. All right. Darius asks, could you speak on fee schedules? Okay. Well, I haven't really used one myself very much. I've never collected on a fee schedule, but I can share with you my understanding of the principles and why I think it makes sense. And then I leave it up to you to kind of dive in and see if it makes sense for you to use it. It's generally considered part of the common law process. And the thinking is, you just like you and I and everyone, we're all beings of infinite value. And what that means is our time, the time that we have to spend and where we spend our time and our energy, that's also valuable and it's precious, and it's particularly precious to us. And that's really common sense. If you think about it, your time, you don't want your time wasted. Do you want your time wasted? I certainly don't. Or your efforts. And you want to be fairly compensated. And actually, there's an ancient maxim. It's the first maxim of what's called the 10 maxims of commerce, which says a workman is worthy of his hire. So all that means to say is that you're meant to be fairly compensated for your time. Okay? Is it making sense? Drop a like on this video if that makes sense, and please subscribe if you haven't already. That really helps. Or follow me if you're watching this on Facebook, for example. Follow. I think it's follow or like. So when you create a fee schedule, which again is a private document, it's not something you need to register on the public side. because it's a private document that reflects how you charge for your time and efforts privately, you can start to share this document with other individuals, men and women that you're acting with through the commercial system. Okay, and you're putting them on notice essentially that you charge fees for your time, so they start to respect you and your time. Okay, so you're basically creating a boundary. You're standing up for your worth. Now, fee schedule. So the most simple fee schedule would be I charge, X an hour, whatever that is, and then maybe X per document that I have to respond to, review, etc., just like an attorney would. Okay. Now there are more complex fee schedules. You could put a fee schedule for being held against your will, arrested, kidnapped, whatever it is. You could put a fee schedule for that. And then you can use your fee schedule proactively or reactively. Proactively means that you send proactive notice to certain public officials, just putting them on notice that you have a fee schedule and that they are subject to it when you act in commerce. You're just letting them know that ahead of time. So that's pretty honorable, because then you're letting them know and there aren't going to be any surprises. But then there's also reactive. Actually, it's not even really reactive. I would say it's just integrated into the administrative process, where you're going to send your fee schedule along with, for example, an affidavit or some other notice, letting them know, hey, in addition to everything else, here's what I'm charging you, and moving forward, this is the fee that's going to be assessed. Okay, so by continuing this process, you're agreeing to that fee schedule. Okay, but because I haven't used one or been able to recoup on one, I'm not going to be able to come along and say to you, well, this is this is how effective this process is. You're just going to have to take that with a grain of salt and study it, and maybe see anecdotes from others who have used a fee schedule, and use that. If you could just excuse me for a minute here, I just need to check something. Nick asks, hi there, can most of this information be applied in England, UK? The short answer is yes, and I want to invite you to be more specific in your questions. But yes, in general, whatever we talk about on this channel has scope everywhere. It applies to every man and woman who is alive. On this planet, or this plane-et. Okay, let's see what other people are asking. Some of you guys are just asking questions that are of a very low quality, and I want to invite you to step it up. I'm not even going to share those on the screen. Try to step up the level of quality of the questions that you ask. Ask more intelligent questions. Okay. Let's see. Darius says, just some background, just recorded my first trust. Great. What kind of trust? If you don't mind sharing, what kind of trust did you create? What was the purpose? Was it more for asset protection? Was it more to conduct commerce? Is it for, generally, it's a good idea to separate those two, but did you mix it? Is it a business trust, a non-business trust? Just it'd be interesting, anything you're willing to share. Not sure in the filing of taxes. Well, first of all, if it's a trust, trusts use 1041s, not 1040s, which you're probably going to, because it is a, if you plan to operate that trust under the tax jurisdiction, in other words, you've gotten an EIN, you're going to do some kind of banking, or maybe the trust is going to own an LLC or a public corporation. It's going to manage that. And then the profits will flow through to the trust. Then you're definitely going to want to consult with an expert in tax accounting to help you to minimize. It's called tax avoidance. So you're not avoiding filing, because if you're running that trust with an EIN, not sure what happened. Hopefully that won't happen again. But I would say just consult with someone who is an expert in trusts, taxes filed by trust, which is a 1041, and see what they can do to help you to, optimize that setup. This is a great question. MP asked, how did you come into this information work? Would love to hear your experiences. Okay, let's talk about that. Pretty much my whole life, I've kind of known or felt that the world is not really the way it's presented. There's more that meets the eye, and things are generally a bit contrived. I've kind of always known that. When I was a kid, I was able to, while I was awake, I think I was about 7 or 8 years old. This is like my childhood paranormal experience. I was able to project my consciousness out of my body, but up kind of like to higher levels of existence. Like I was able to project my consciousness where I was being conscious of being or experiencing the whole world at the same time, or even beyond the whole world. And then unfortunately, for whatever reason, that ability was taken away from me almost as quickly as I got it, and I was never really able to replicate it since then. Around 15 to 17 years ago, I had significant awakenings to the fact that, mainstream reality is basically built on a lot of lies and a lot of fabrication, a lot of theater. Like, so that idea that all the world's a stage, like suddenly I realized that was actually very true. But I still wasn't getting a complete picture. And I was, the only, the biggest impact that had me at that time is I realized that, I was kind of not taking very good care of myself. And that theme kind of came out over the ensuing years. I was actually addicted to pharmaceuticals because this idea was implanted into me that I was abnormal and could only function with pharmaceuticals. So basically anxiolytic, anti-anxiety medication. And literally through this mind virus, like looking back, it's like a mind virus, supported by external players like psychiatrists and psychologists, of course, who reinforce it, that like I could never function without, drugs, basically. And then later that morphed into other things like smoking a lot of cigarettes, smoking a lot of cannabis, experimenting with other drugs. I don't really see that as a problem, but, the addictive side was really, at one point being essentially a pothead, being almost a chain smoker, and of course the pharmaceuticals. So when I had that awakening, I realized two very important things. One, that I should it would be better if I got rid of those addictions because they were draining my energy and they weren't really who I was. And two, I had within me the capacity to do that without having to hire, spend, thousands and thousands of dollars or hire or use, complex systems or even get anybody's permission to do it. I just had to be resolute in my desire to do it and then just, in a thoughtful way, go around doing it. So that's how I weaned myself off of these drugs until I was completely clean from them in 2010 when I was already traveling in Mexico. And I continued to have these awakenings, but I still wasn't in balance. So I was kind of, afraid of, I was getting into this fear state about the New World Order and, just, the secret societies and everything. And I kind of saw the negative, but I hadn't reached a point where I could see like how it was all being perpetrated and then how to end it effectively. It just seemed like a lot of doom and gloom. And then in 2021, after completely seeing through the absolute scam that happened at the beginning of 2020, just a complete fraud of an event that is so obviously a fraud that it still to this day surprises me that people don't come out and state it as clearly as I do, just how fraudulent it is. The events of 2020. And I saw right through it immediately, including everybody's behavior. And it was very frustrating for me. But I kind of had a sense that I was still missing some key information for me to piece together exactly how they were getting away with it. So then I got introduced to natural law specifically. And I'll just mention some of the teachers who made the biggest impact because you can find them and you can learn from them too. And they have tons of publicly available information and knowledge that they've shared. In fact, some of them have huge bodies of knowledge. So Mark Passio, P-A-S-S-I-O, his platform for the last 15 years is called What on Earth is Happening. That's his website, whatonearthishappening.com. I've never met him, but I've learned from him extensively. And what kicked it all off for me was his 9-hour one-day seminar, which was recorded and shared all over the internet. And it's called Natural Law, the Real Law of Attraction and How to Apply It in Your Life. Okay. When I watched that, that was a game changer. And that opened up the door to learning from a whole bunch of other educators. Mark eventually, I can't remember how much longer it was, probably like 6-8 months later, I got an email from Mark or from his team. They invited me to be a content creator on his network. He calls it the onegreatwordnetwork.com, where he was inviting other content creators who were talking about natural law and these related topics and sovereignty to come and cross post everything on his platform. So I got invited to do that, which was a real honor for me. I remember when I received that email, I was really honored that he personally or someone on his team thought that my work was worthy of that. And I was fairly new to all of it. And frankly, I think my work today is much better than it was, but hey, we're all moving through that journey. And then just to answer your question at the last point, in 2023, in the earlier part of the year, through the same network, that's when I found out about, commercial law, the straw man, which I probably had heard of before, but never really paid attention to. And the reason why that is because after studying natural law diligently for more than a year, I was still kind of left with this question like, well, this is all well and good, but why, how do we really get out of financial tyranny and debt slavery? Like there really has to be a way to do that. And that's when this fell into my lap. It's funny how that works. Things just fall into your lap. So great question. Okay, Darius says his trust was irrevocable. Yeah, my effort is to create irrevocable trust to the greatest extent I can. Yeah, I've been learning trusts from Creditor Academy. Shout out to Paul Michael Rellan, great guy, a student of Patrick Devine, who was another great teacher in these realms, who understood natural law in his own way, but it was also very focused on how to create a remedy from the commercial financial oppression. So shout out to Paul Michael, Creditor Academy. I learned a lot from their trust course, and that's what got me started in setting up trusts. Finance Matters asks, if your company director, has tax liability, can the man settle with a promissory note? Okay, it's a little rough around, your question's a little roughly formulated, but I think we can explain it like this. So when we say the person is also known as the ens legis. If you go look up the definition of person, I don't have these references readily available, but they are pretty available from the US Code and from the UCC, mostly from the Federal Reserve Act, basically, and the CFR Code of Federal Regulations is another place to research. But basically, this word person has been hijacked, and now it refers also to a corporation. So a person essentially is a public corporation. It's a state-created corporation that was created shortly after you were born through the issuing of a birth certificate, and then not long after that, issuing of a unique number, which is this what we call here in the United States the Social Security number. So only a person can be taxed. You can never be a taxpayer. You as a man or a woman are never a taxpayer. Only a person can be taxed, okay, or an entity, okay. But you're acting as the surety. That's why all the obligations are falling on your shoulders. So the question is, how can you settle these tax liabilities? Well, there are a couple different ways to do it. In equity, they just use equity uses what's called a non-negotiable notice of acceptance. It's just a simple way of, or it's also called banker's acceptance, where you basically stamp your whatever they sent you in a certain way, as though acting as a banker. And if they sent you a coupon, essentially you're turning it into a negotiable instrument and sending it back to them to settle it, because your signature that infuses that document commercial value. So you mentioned a promissory note. Promissory note is just a different way of formulating it, but it still requires your signature and a link back to the public asset, which is the birth certificate, vis-a-vis the Social Security account, to link it back to whatever is on the public ledger. Okay. So yes, you can discharge all of your tax liabilities with a signature. There's not just one way to do it, and it's important, to practice a way to do it. Another way that people do it is they correct their status, which I recommend, becoming a secured party, and then as the debtor, they're issuing negotiable instruments such as promissory notes or bills of exchange, and you can literally get authorization to do this at a bank with no resistance once it's been approved through the bank's compliance. Okay, so that's just a different way to do it. But the bottom line is, if it's a public obligation, it is prepaid, and your ability to pay it is just limited to performance, which is acceptance. Okay, there's just different flavors of acceptance. Darius says, what are some good books or literature? I have to admit, I'm more of a video and audio book guy than a reader. I do read sometimes, but I probably could read more. Let me just peek in my library here, see what I can recommend. It's a pretty broad question too, so that's what makes it hard for me to. Creditors and Their Bonds is a good one to read. It doesn't have an author cited. We've actually been going through that on YouTube, and I'll probably continue that. But today, I wanted to just do more of an open format Q&A. So that would be one. Let me take a look. If you want to understand the origin of the Federal Reserve, G. Edward Griffin has a classic book called The Creature from Jekyll Island. That's more of a storytelling view of what happened. Let's see. Levine's Manual on Commercial Law. I just started reading this. This was brought to my attention by one of my mentors. It's an older book from the 1940s, the late 1940s, but it has some really great information about the different jurisdictions of law in particular. Those are a few. If you ask more specific questions, I'll see if I can give you maybe a more specific answer on that. Okay. Some folks are recommending some books. Thanks, I appreciate that, MP. I'm glad that you enjoyed that spontaneous recounting. Fairly condensed, obviously skipping over some details, some juicy, sometimes very juicy details. But I'm glad you're getting value. It's great to have you here, and hope you'll stick with us. Okay, let's see. I'm just looking for more questions. So we have a hater here. That's great. You gotta love those haters that come in and you have no idea who they are and they just want to pick a fight with you. So to Michael, I'm here in Colombia. Why don't you come down here and say that to my face? Let's have a face-to-face conversation about it. Let's see how courageous you are. Okay, because I'm not afraid to stand up for myself. I'm happy to meet you face to face. If you have a challenge, it's easy to write those words from a distance from an anonymous location. Come, let's meet up in Cali, Colombia. Okay, let's see what you're made of. See what you're made of. Since the topic was brought up, Laserific asks, are you still traveling the country? It depends on which country. I'm actually here in Cali, Colombia in South America. I used to live here. Some of you guys know that. Maybe some people don't realize that. So I consider it my home away from home. It's a place that I went through a lot of changes, a lot of evolution. Probably would have stayed straight through, maybe. But during the big scam of 2020, I did leave because there were some things I wanted to take care of back home, including even seeing family, and I wasn't sure, what was going to happen. So I left, but I finally came back this year. I had a couple of excuses. I'm getting some dental work done. My teeth just were not in great shape. And I have a really wonderful dentist here. She's just amazing, cutting edge. And dentistry here costs about a tenth. I'm kidding you not. It costs a tenth of what it costs in the US in most cases for the high end, high quality dentistry, like, top, cutting edge, well done, artisan dentistry. And I'm already been feeling better as a result. I've already noticed significant improvements in my how I feel, and as a result, and she's not even done. It's really important. It's partly for the aesthetics, but it's mostly to fix some serious problems I've been having with some of my teeth. So that was a big motivation. Other than that, like I said, it's home away from home, spending time with friends, reconnecting, um, enjoying life. Yeah, enjoying life as much as possible, and just vibing with different environments. One thing I love about Latin America in general, not even just Colombia, but see, the thing about Latinos, or people from Latin America is, in my opinion, and this goes back to natural law and what happens within us, is they're much more in balance with their heart to mind kind of balance. So they're very intelligent. They're actually, the word intelligent is holistic. So they're actually more intelligent than I would say most people in the United States. Or I don't want to say most people that I've met, unfortunately. Because what happens in the United States, I've noticed that the culture bias is a lot to the left brain, so intellect. There's so much focus on intellect, and the heart is kind of very secondary. And so people are almost afraid to express their emotions, especially very strong emotions, like when they get angry about something. But even just strong positive emotions, or so-called positive emotions, like strong feelings of love or desire and so forth. So, people in Latin America, Latinos, they are so expressive across the board. The dynamic range is so much greater, and they're not afraid to. I would even say that I can tell more clearly what they're thinking without even them saying it, just from the expression on their face. I feel like they're much more expressive. So I feel like it's a healing for me. It's very healing to be around people that I consider more authentic. So that's actually a deeper reason why I love spending so much time here. Is it's healing and therapeutic for me, because it allows me to be naturally holistic and not feel weird, because I stand out from the way most people are behaving. So that's a big reason why I'm here. Okay. My mom is from there. Yeah, it's a beautiful country. And the beautiful thing about Colombia is it's got so much biodiversity and eco-diversity. You have pretty much all the different climates. You have desert, you have several desert climates, you have the high Sierra, you have the plains, um, probably not using the correct geological terms. You have valleys, mountaintops. You've got the tropical and the subtropical, and even the rainforests. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. You can experience almost any climate. You've got really cold mountainous climates. So within the boundaries of one country, one region, just one part of South America, you can pretty much, depending on your travel schedule, you can pretty much experience all the different climates, within a week or so, if giving yourself a reasonable pace. So yeah, it's been pretty incredible. Other questions? I'm not seeing a lot of questions. I appreciate all the feedback, though. C says, yep, David's Spanish is great. Well, I appreciate that. On my other channel, Freedom Vibe Art, and let me drop a link to that, just in case you guys aren't familiar with it. Just grab a link. I have one or two long form videos entirely in Spanish. One where I talk about human rights, so derechos humanos in Spanish. And I think I had another one. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. You guys doing okay? You must have some questions. Just scrolling back to see what I might have missed. So if you don't have any questions, maybe share what you are currently working on, what you yourself have been reading, who you've been studying. Okay, here's a question. Any success with the coupon method? So for me personally, no. For people I know in my immediate circle or in our community, yes. However, it's been inconsistent, and I'm going to tell you why I think it is. It's been inconsistent. First of all, there's not just one. Apparently, there's not just one way to do this, which can make things a little bit confusing if you are just getting started and you're trying to figure this all out, which is kind of what I've been doing as well. Like, so I've been, over the last year and a half, I've been trying to figure this all out. And I've gained better layers of understanding. And now I understand there are like two main paths to how to address this. There's probably more bifurcations, but for simplicity, there's two main paths. I'll talk about the first one is the one that probably most people are referring to when they talk about the coupon method, is you're just endorsing the instrument, endorsing this coupon as making it into a money order, essentially into a negotiable instrument, and you're sending it back to the bank for settlement because it represents positive value, which, as we know, means there's already an asset listed in the books. So they're just looking for us to set off the account, which means for them to create a liability to offset the asset. So what I've heard, and I haven't really been able to quantify this, and I think there really isn't anyone in this space who's been able to quantify this in a very scientific way. Although I'd like to be able to do that, and that's why I've been, doing a lot of research and gathering data. But it appears, at least anecdotally, that when you correct your status and become a secured party, it becomes far easier, significantly easier to use that method. And my understanding is the reason is because the bank now recognizes that you are operating in the private, you've perfected your status, and therefore you have the ability to use negotiable instruments with that corrected status. So that's one side. However, then you go to equity law, which is not as old as common law, but it's kind of a newer jurisdiction. And equity just deals with fairness. So equity is very simple. Equity says, well, we know that there is no money because they took away the gold. And since then, the only way you can, other than paying a debt, the only way to satisfy a debt is through performance, which is acceptance. So equity says, well, because we already have that ability, we can exercise it. And equity just uses a very simple notice. Again, it's a stamping or a signing in a certain way of the presentment that we kind of talk about, but it doesn't require any particular status. You don't have to correct your status to use equity. So that's kind of one key difference. But I've also heard, just being honest with you, that sometimes people have to send multiple notices or even go to the next step of enforcement, even in equity. So nothing is 100%. So if anybody comes along and says, whoa, there's a way to make this work 100% with the Social Security person, they're wrong. That's why I've started to lean more towards what Paul Michael and Creditor Academy have been teaching is, well, if you can just perfect your status, correct your status, and set yourself up, so now you have a bond, and the bankers are going to take you seriously, and they're going to grant you the authority to walk into a bank and drop a bill of exchange on the counter to the teller and say, can you please wire these funds through my account, through your business account, whether it be a business trust or an LLC or maybe both. And all you have to do is start assigning all of your liabilities to your businesses, your business entities, and you have the same ability. It's just now you're doing it all on the private, from the private, with entities that you've set up, and you're not trying to over-engineer the Social Security person. So my new perspective on this is we should stop trying to win with the Social Security person, and we should just move away from doing commerce with the person. Okay, obviously close down whatever you have there. That's the other thing about equity. Equity, there's a maximum equity works, but not by halves. So what that means is if you bring equity to a credit card, they're going to close the account. Okay. And I've only heard one case in our network of someone who was able to set off a credit card account and they kept the account open. And I'm not even sure if that's stuck, because sometimes people tell you something and then new information comes along as well. They close the account 3 months later. I've heard that many times. That's why I take everything with a grain of salt. And the real remedy is to level up the mindset. What we're really trying to do here is not manipulate coupons on a piece of paper. What we're really trying to do is stand in our authority as sovereigns and kind of look at people that would come along and say, well, you have to do this, you have to do that, and say, well, no, I don't. I mean, of course, I'm going to do something that I think is in my best interest and isn't going to cause harm to anyone. In other words, it's going to be respectful of natural law and respectful of others. But what makes you think you have a right to tell me what to do? So the real level up is in the mindset, and the banking part, when we move it more into the trusts, which is a type of contract, then we're taking superior control. And even the secured party process involves setting up a trust. So that should be a pretty big hint that that's where this is all headed. Okay, let me see. You guys, people are probably asking some questions. Well, so Linda asked, can you give any advice to successfully discharge credit card with Wells Fargo? So I feel like I already answered this, at least in part, in what I just said. My question to you would be, are you still trying to conduct commerce using the Social Security person? And if so, why are you doing that? Why do you think that's the best approach, as opposed to creating entities that you set up yourself, or maybe in conjunction with others, people that you trust? In other words, trust, which is a type of contract. And remember, we have an unlimited right to contract. That's even in the Constitution, but we didn't need the Constitution to tell us that, because it comes from creation itself. You have an unlimited right to contract, so a trust is a very special type of contract. So my question to you is, if that card is with the Social Security person, why would you not just want to close that out anyway, which you can do with equity? You can do it in multiple ways, and then start moving all your financial matters into the private, where you are going to experience both more freedom, but also more control yourself over what's going on. Can you talk about areas in which you've used this process? Which process? Because I've talked about a bunch of different processes. So which process are you talking about? Marcelo says, why are you skipping my question? because you're assuming that I work for you, and maybe you're being too lazy instead of just retyping your question, which would have taken the same amount of effort as asking me that. Any wins you have heard of? Yeah, so if you want to read yourself these wins, let me share with you a link to our Telegram. Give me a second. And I just need to check the time, how much longer I'm going to be able to be on here. Bear with me. Might have to wrap up soon, in about 10 minutes. Wish I could have stayed on longer, but we've been on here for almost an hour. Let me just copy this link. This is our private Telegram. I say private because it is private and I'm inviting you. But we don't charge a fee or an admission to get into that group. And in that group, there is a topic called win, success, and remedy. And I've invited community members to come in there and share their wins. So that's a great place to catch up on that. Now let me go back up here because I lost my place. Yeah, so we'll wrap up in about 9 minutes. Here's a great question. Have you ever had to apply any lawful remedies in Colombia? What's Colombia? A combination of Colombia and remedy. Have you ever had to apply any of the law remedies in Colombia? How does the law system there differ? Great question. I'm actually, while I'm here, I have some friends here who are kind of well connected in the legal and financial systems here. And one of the things I want to do, time permitting, is to explore that very question and see, you know, what does it actually take to operate in the private in Colombia? Because that's the question I'm most interested in. So in the US, same thing, like how do we operate privately? So in Colombia, I would want to ask the same question, you know, not trying to game the system, not trying to, you know, get something for nothing, which unfortunately a lot of people are doing, but how to properly use the system to maybe extricate yourself from the public side or operate privately and take superior control of all of your affairs. So yeah, I mean, in Colombia, it's unfortunately, you know, for all the positives that I talked about before about, you know, this great culture being very warm-hearted, and the negative or the flip side of the coin is that it's a very oppressed society, and this is something we would have to talk about extensively. So I'm just going to give you the high level. It's oppressed by Catholicism, and I know some people are not going to like that I said that, but Catholicism is a mainstream religion, and it's a form of mind control. It's a very sophisticated ideology designed to keep people thinking in a certain way and acting in a certain way, and specifically to be obedient to authority. Catholicism. So while there are beautiful aspects of every tradition, including Catholicism, that's still the nature of Catholicism by its origin. And then you have just a financial system where you have a big polarization between the haves and the have-nots. Again, knowing that they're using negotiable instruments in Colombia, just like in other countries, but yet you have this extreme polarity and a lot of people just struggling just to get by. So I'm looking at it holistically. I'm not, again, if there's one thing I've learned, there's no free lunch. So I'm not expecting a magic bullet to come in and save everybody. There is no savior. That's the biggest lie of all the major religions, that there's some external savior coming, and a lot of political movements. There is no savior coming. You're the savior of yourself If you haven't figured that out yet, then maybe today's the day you're going to start to discover that you're your own savior. So, but I am specifically interested because of my strong connection here in Colombia and just my love of, the people I've met here and the environment. If there's anything that I can do to contribute, even by demonstrating what is possible or working with others, I'm going to do that. I'm only restricted by how many things I want to work on at the same time, and therefore, it's at some point it's infeasible to tackle all of them. But I'm doing the best I can. I'm really doing the best I can, and I hope to step up my performance in that regard. Okay, do we have time for a few more questions? About 6 more minutes. Treasure Hunter Neil, I want to learn how to pay taxes using tax forms. Well, first of all, you're already stumbling right there, because tax forms are not meant to pay anything. They are for reporting taxes. But you can accept your tax obligations because you have that privilege to do that, because there is no money. There is no money of exchange, which is gold and silver, which is the only valid money of exchange under the Constitution. So now we're just dealing with negotiable instruments, and all the laws were subsequently updated to say that debts must be discharged either through payment or acceptance. So essentially what you're doing is you're accepting them, and your signature is infusing whatever document you're signing with it's what's injecting the commercial value into that paper. And therefore that becomes a valuable instrument, a negotiable instrument, a security, which the bank and the treasury or a bank can receive and essentially earn from that, earn interest, trade it, sell it, and so forth. So if you want to learn, in the members area of our membership, and I'll drop the link here. Oh, I think I already did. I'll just drop it one more time. One of our members who discharged about 10,000 plus in federal taxes was very kind enough to share the notice that he sent to do that. And it's based on equity. And if he hadn't shared it, I probably wouldn't even be able to share it with you. So I'm grateful that he did that. We're gonna have to wrap up here. I know I didn't get to answer everybody's question. It's just I have a time constraint. If I didn't have that time constraint, I would stay on longer because I really enjoy this, and I'm glad we got a chance to connect spontaneously. So we had about 50 or so people on the stream on average the whole time. That may be across different platforms. So I really appreciate you showing up. Nothing of value in life is free. So the best way to pay, if you got value from this conversation, pay for it with your like on the video wherever you watched it, follow, subscribe, like on my social media, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook or wherever you happen to watch this, and maybe share it with someone else, and keep showing up. If you're subscribed or following, you're going to get notified in the future, and I'll try to do this more frequently. I'm going to make an effort to go live or do a video at least once a week to be a little more consistent. And that way we can get more questions answered. So I really appreciate you. And I apologize for not being able to get to everybody's questions. But I would say in the meantime, jump into the community, become a member if you haven't and you want to, so you can join us on those private study sessions. And other than that, just continue studying from multiple sources, and stay committed to whatever it is you're trying to achieve. And I'll see you guys very soon. So enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.